Hey, I just wanted to post a video based on a rain session that I had today and trying out, a new set of clubs. My entire bag is totally different now. And, I just want to record some of the nuances of the new clubs, but also like my swing concepts that, I feel are like stabilized. And then now it's really just implementing them, and then this is the exciting part for me, just hitting balls today. It's the first time where I felt like I actually have a repeatable, consistent swing, at least swing thoughts in the very least. And so that's a big thing for me because I've never really had that, throughout my golf career. And then to me, this is the absolute foundation for becoming, a very, very good player, because then eventually, if those swing thoughts are virtuous and technically correct, then you can then start getting a consistent ball flight, which is to me, a trademark of scratch golfers. And then people, you can become a scratch golfer, I would say, without a very, very consistent ball flight if you have an excellent short game and your errant shots are not too wayward. But to me, it's, if you want to become like even better than scratch, I'd be surprised if there are very many people who don't have a consistent ball flight off their face, especially with their irons. The driver can always be a little, here and there, but definitely with their irons, so they can attack more flags. And then if you couple that with a very, very good short game, then that's a good setup. So that's what's really cool about my game right now. Obviously, there's still lots of things to work on, in particular my driver, but standing over the ball with all my irons, I have objectives that, are very clear, and this is what I'm going to title this video, is to only focus on the things that I can control. And, it's three major things, in particular with the irons. It's a good setup, a full shoulder turn, and then, which requires the hip to be turned quite a bit as well. And then, I don't know how to word this, but just like a medium pace transition, downswing. And so the way I'm thinking about it now is that the hands have to keep the club moving, because the ultimate objective is to bring the club head back to the ball, but don't move them, So there's a difference between something moving and then actually moving it, and even worse, tugging on that club handle. So the hands move, but it's more of like a fall, just a little bit. And then once that's happening, while that's happening, the feet are interacting with the ground, you grabbing the ground, so to speak, to begin turning, and then clearing the hips and then getting to for me, I'm left-handed, to my right side. So that's what, and that's very, very important. I noticed today, because I'm hitting these new Srixons, and they're not as forgiving, as my TaylorMades. These are absolutely like a player's irons, like they just have a very thin blade, and so they're not a blade, but they just have a very thin profile. So, I can't be rushing my swing, and then I found that this is why I was like, I shouldn't have got these irons. But then after I hit a few, I realized this is why the good players play those clubs, because it actually forces you to fix a tempo and to not change it, which is really elements of the third part. So set up, a full turn, and then like just a steady transition, and so, which again begins with the club allowing to fall. And so, that's important. And that's what, again, all very, very good players have. And so as long as they stay in that tempo for a round or two or three or four, then they can play very, very good golf and repeatable golf. And then again, like I said, hit consistent ball flights. So they forced me to do that, because hitting it anywhere but close to the center was, it's not as forgiving, at all. And so that was really good. And then once I slowed my swing down, I started hitting pretty much all my irons with like a very, very light draw. most of the time straight. I prefer a straight ball flight. A fade would be nice, but a baby draw is also extremely good, but it has to be very, very tight. And so because, you know, I don't like playing golf with like a serious draw, or definitely not a hook. So all the shots were pretty much straight, and then a slight draw, and then occasionally I would leave the face wide open, and that's the biggest part that I noticed that penalizes me. If you leave the face wide open with these players' clubs, then it's going to be way to the left for me. And so because, you know, the point of having irons like these is that the ball can be more workable. And then the negative side to that is that, you know, if you leave your face open, it's going to exaggerate that. So I did that sometimes. And then, you know, that was my biggest mistake, you know, with those clubs. And so you got to really release the club, you know, and then not release it too fast for sure. And so that's, again, the tempo thing. So that's really all I can control, because once you're at the top, you do have control as to, you know, usually your thought before you swing mostly. But so these are the things that I control. The thought before I swing any club, really, unless I'm actually trying to absolutely like hammer one, is don't try and get extra distance or anything. Just trust these three things: the setup, the turn, and then the very, very, you know, relaxed, you know, move to allow my hips to go, you know, because if the arms get going, then they don't allow the hips to do anything, and that's terrible golf. So, and it's made worse the longer the irons are. So that's what I can control. So my pre-shot thought is don't be in a hurry, you know, let the turn finish, you know, and then let your hips clear, and then, you know, everything else will work out. So that's a very tangible thought that actually really, really does help me with my irons I'm focusing on now. And you know, bring the club back and get a full turn. And so sometimes I still feel like I'm only turning with my shoulder, so I can't do that. I have to really, in my practice swing, feel like my hips are opening, you know, and then that's a good, actually, pre-shot routine for me, is not so much where the hands are, and all, which is obviously important, but, you know, definitely feel like the club is still square, you know, to my path, of course, not rolling it open, but is to really turn, but then move my hip, you know, get it going, because my tendency is to sometimes not use it really at all. And you can get away with that sometimes with the wedges, but not with the irons, definitely not the long irons, and absolutely not with the driver, which was the next thing I'm going to talk about. So pre-shot thought with all my irons, don't try and mutilate it. First of all, these irons are like this thin. Let me actually show them. I mean, they're small. So, I mean, when you look down on them, it's pretty intimidating. These are Strixon Z785s. Okay, and that's a 5-iron. So you can see the profile is pretty narrow. So they look amazing, you know, for anybody out there. I'm not trying to get people to be afraid of them. The construction of the club is absolutely incredible visually. And then the shafts, I believe, are the exact same as that I had on my last club. So KBS Tour Flight 120S. So there's no adjustment to that, and the grip is just a different color. Well, actually, it's a different grip, but I'm used to those because those are the ones that are pretty standard on all my other clubs. So I actually prefer those grips as opposed to the stock TaylorMade ones. So my last clubs were P770s, the older ones, and top line was not this thin. Needless to say, like, these are, I mean, when you look down on these, like from the top, you're not looking at much. Okay, so anyway, I convinced myself that it was a good thing to get them after I started really, really like slowing my transition down. So that was incredible, you know, and so that's really it for my irons. You know, it's like, obviously, like, you know, I could keep working on lots of different things, but in particular, better use of the ground, you know, in my legs, but bottom up. But that's enough, you know, for me to hit pretty reliable shots, and just really, really nice ball flight. Again, shout out to the Strixon. I don't know how this club, which feels like it has absolutely no weight in the back really, except this bar. I mean, the ball is going high. So it just shows that, a well-struck shot will be rewarded, with good height. And, again, it could have been maybe a slight pull. I'm not really good at like getting targets on the driving range, but, they were going pretty straight, and then landing a bit to the right. So maybe they're a bit pulley as well. But either way, like, it's kind of strange, like how the trade-offs are with these irons. Like, I never really felt like this bottom hand was like tempted to like roll over, which it does a lot with my old clubs. So my miss was actually holding on to it, and then, like I said, hitting those flares, some of them like way to the left. But it's weird, like I'd rather have that as my miss than those kind of shots where I'm like rolling my hands over. I don't know why. It's not like the club is telling me to do one thing or the other, but again, it's only one sample size today. But that part I was comfortable with. And then I didn't really have those like sweeping draws, which I hit quite a bit with my older irons. So the cool thing about it is that I'm looking down a little bit more afraid because of the lower profile, the thinner profile of the irons. And so I'm just more careful with my swing. I don't just like scream at it like I could do with my other clubs that I was also very, very comfortable with because I had for a while. So, I think it was the profile of the iron, but then also just, newness, where I slowed everything down. I realized, again, this is like the epiphany where I don't really need to like go crazy from the top, just not even at the top or even down here or anything like that. Just get the club back to the ball, and then lagging behind, and so maintaining wrist angles and then clearing the hips well in advance. And so that's the key, really. So, I just, before I hit, I just tell myself, don't try and feel like swinging your arms really fast is going to do anything, because it's not. So I convince myself of that before each shot, and I do have to remind myself every single time. And that's the most important thing, because even if my full shoulder turn isn't perfect, but I still don't rush the transition, I may get away with it. And so that's key, first and foremost. And so I have control over that. Next, I do have control now where I just don't like do a superficial turn. I really just say go further than what you're used to. Just go as much as you can. And then don't ruin it by like rushing the transition, So those are things that really, really helped with my irons. Okay. I got new wedges. I mean, they felt a little bit different, but they were fine. It's like they all, the grips are what I'm used to, and then the club head looks nice, and then the grooves are newer. So I don't suspect those will be poorer performing than my Vokeys, but I got these these Callaway Mac Daddy wedges, but they look good. But just got to confirm that the yardages are the same, because they're the same loft, but I have a feeling that there will be. So now I was hitting my 3-iron because I don't have the courage to put my 3 or the 4-iron in for these clubs. So I took those out. I put in my own 3-iron, which is a UDI driving iron, which I'm going to replace with a 2-iron when it arrives, but they're only 2 degrees difference. But I was implementing those same concepts prior to hitting. Don't go crazy fast, relax, do the full turn, and then, just with good tempo, get through. And I was hitting these 3 irons like high, and so it was great, and so that's been my second biggest weakness if I have 2 major weaknesses in my game that I care about, is my driver and then my long irons off the ground, and so, which is not a big surprise because those are the 2 hardest things to hit. But the cool thing about this situation was that the fix is very known. This is the nice thing about having these concepts now, which I've never had in the past. I pretty much know most of the time what causes the issue. And usually it's just one of those things, the shoulder turn wasn't complete, the transition got really fast, or the transition was okay, but then the hips just stalled for some reason. And so it's it's only a few things, that I quote unquote need to debug. And, I pretty much know, almost most of the time what caused the issue. And I like that. And so that's good. And so that pretty much takes care of my irons, and so another cool thing too is that I have a 0-iron, and so it's my 3-wood basically, and it's somewhere between 13 and 14 degrees, depending on how much Titleist bent it from 16 down. But I was like striping that, and so 99% of the time I'll hit that off the tee, but I even tried a couple off the ground and they were okay. And so, it's most importantly, I want to hit that off the tee, and I don't want to have to use my driver that often unless I'm trying to get something or I'm a really long par four. But um, like this time, it was consistently landing 250, whereas in some of the simulator results that I posted, it was like I would get some sort of close to that in the air, but they more often not need to roll out to get that yardage. But these ones, I'm pretty sure I was carrying them at least 250. That's how clean that they were, and they were high and penetrating. So implementing those same concepts. And so as the irons get longer and longer, the shoulder turn that becomes more and more crucial to nail that. And then actually as well, they're all ultimately important, is then to not rush the transition, because the faster you rush the transition, it hurts you with all your clubs, including your wedges, even putter, I would even say. But it's and chipping, but can't do it. Okay, so all the errors get magnified once I make a mistake on one of those things. So that type of thing. So it's that was really all of it. So the irons, like I stand over it again, I don't expect to hit every shot perfectly, but I understand what I need to do. And then that pre-swing thought is the most potent for me, is just don't rush, don't swing your arms so fast. Like it does not help at all. And so that's not where the primary source of power comes from in a swing. It's the turns, angle preservation, and then speed, because then you're applying the speed to a good technique. And the speed is happening down, closer to the ball. And so then you get, if you want, a little bit more, but there's like a natural limit, which is again more of like a conceptual thing. Like this 5-iron, yeah, like if somebody like Bryson DeChambeau, let's say he was left-handed, he could obviously hit this thing farther than I can, but he's going to be expending much more energy, and he's going to be doing a much fuller turn, and his body is going to be stronger, where at impact he's going to have more stability with the club head. But there is a fundamental limit to these clubs. And so obviously what he would be doing then would increase the amount of dispersion and uncertainty. But obviously he's figured it out with what he's doing. But just for my purposes, like I don't need this 5-iron to go like 240 yards or more, which Bryson could easily do that. So I don't even know what to do with those kind of yardages. I wouldn't even ever hit my driver, really. Like if I could hit my irons anywhere near as far as he could, at the courses I play. And like I would literally never need my driver, because like he could probably hit his 5-iron about as far as my driver, and so probably further actually. But so it's not my thing, this 5-iron for me, maybe like 210 or something, over 200 for sure. And so that's it, and then I realized I can get that with without the arms doing all the work. They're not to be racing, they have to just be like along for the ride, so to speak. So irons conceptually felt really good. And so aside from the irons in my bag and my putter, I have a driver. And so the nice thing about that is that those concepts, that pre-swing thought, and then those three things, it's that's pretty much it. Like that covers a majority of my bag. And then obviously chipping and putting, which it's there's still some elements of like similarity to that, just with not rushing, all that kind of stuff. And then the driver for me, the only thing that I really need to remember, that it's one of those things where it's like 70% of it, maybe even more, is the head has to stay back. Like if you imagine, like the ball, your head is behind the ball, it has to stay behind the ball. Potentially, if you want to hit it higher, get it even further behind, but it has to stay behind the ball, to at least impact, preferably a little bit longer. So that was my main swing thought, and I realized I have to stand a bit closer because I'm getting too like down a little bit, and so it just feels like too upright, because like I'm not used to that, and I've been working on that to get more and more up. But the knee flex doesn't have to be very like serious with my drive. I don't know why I do that. It's like I'm almost sitting down sometimes, but you know, it's better than what it was before, but I just need the knees to like unlock, and then that's it. And so you don't need the knees to be like fully squatted down or anywhere near that, because it doesn't actually help the rotation. You know, if you like it, just if you logically, if I'm sitting down, it's harder for me to rotate, but if I stand up, I can get more, you know, degrees of freedom. So it's that kind of thing. So you know, and I posted a video on this recently, and it's the same things, you know, that I said, but reiterated even further that I would just add that to that sequence that I just said. It's like, always keep the head back. Now, convince myself I don't need to swing my arms very quick. So keep that thought, because that's extremely important with the driver. I always tend to like just hammer it with my hands, and that doesn't help because it doesn't allow the club to like naturally go along its arc, which you're guiding it really is a better way to think about it, preserving it on that arc. And then, you know, do the full shoulder turn, and then, you know, just do like a very like, you know, stable, you know, relaxed transition, and then, you know, so the hips can clear. So, and lead, you know, and then pretty much if that happens, then, you know, you don't have to hit perfect shots all the time, but as long as like the hands are not racing out in front, it tends to be good. So, you know, again, a full shoulder turn, hips and arms. Make sure in my practice swing, I'm opening my hips as a practice, just to feel that, to make sure I'm engaging them. And then, you know, just with the driver, it doesn't hurt to pause. It's very rare for me to do that because I tend to just get antsy. So it's not necessary, but it helps. A lot of people do that. So if I remember to do that, that's great, because my swing is not super long, you know, super deep. But, you know, it's the exact same principles. You know, it's just the setup is different, you know, just adjusting to the fact that I have a longer club and I should be standing a bit more upright. And then it's the same thing, you know, at this point. And so, but I have to add that thought prior to that, you know, sequence of events, is that the head has to stay back. And for me, it just feels like it's staying back really long, but it has to be at least that, and then more. And then I was hitting them, you know, not perfect, but I was getting some that were going high, which is what I want. And so, you know, it's, if I coupled that with, you know, again, implementing that thought of the don't swing the arms too fast, it really helped, you know. And then, because my driver, like, I tend to just get really like, this hand just flies, you know, and then to hit these like smother draws. And so sometimes if it's not too fast, they can be in play, but they, first of all, they look stupid because they're low, and then they have no carry, you know, at all. And so I could accomplish that with with another club, you know, like with my 2-iron or driving iron or anything. So it's a useless shot, you know, for me, unless I'm hitting my driver further than my 0-iron, which now there's a higher benchmark to beat it, 250 yards at least, and that's not including roll, I don't think. And so, you know, now I really have to carry my driver 280 or more, or else it doesn't make sense, you know, to really ever hit it, because my 0-iron now, I stand over it. With 10 balls, I feel like 7 will be really good, you know. And so that's where I'm at, you know. I don't know what the other one I'll probably top, but that's where I'm at, you know. And for me, that's a good percentage. So it's good though. I like that, you know. And then so I don't really, I always say this, but I don't really need to hit that many balls anymore. I just need to like preserve these concepts with my irons, you know, and just, you know, dial in really the shoulder turn always being completed, and then, you know, making sure my transition's never rushed, and then, you know, it's pretty much just getting the yardages right, and then picking the right club and all that. And then, you know, I should probably maybe like once a week or every few days hit a small bucket with the driver, and then, you know, just keep improving on it. And then it just becomes like a short game thing, you know, like just dialing in from 100 yards and in. But in general, I've seen much better progress in that. I have a new putter too, which I just like it, standing over it, so I don't think it's going to get worse than my last one. I had a Scotty Cameron Del Mar, but it always felt like it was like hooking the ball because it was very heavy at the tip, you know, and so the club head was very heavy, and then the shaft went right into the, you know, just like a regular iron, right into the edge. So it always felt like it was wanting to turn over. So my new putter, the shaft goes right through the middle. And so it's better apparently for people who want to putt straight back and straight through, which is what I want to do. And so I don't think my putting is going to get worse once I calibrate with that thing. And so, it's pretty much just kind of getting my driver better, and then, planning out my short game shots a little bit better, taking more time, and not always just grabbing my lob wedge, which is what I do everywhere. And so I need to stop doing that. And then so that's the nice thing about when I play Memorial Park, I walk. And so I do find my short game is tangibly better when I play and I'm walking. And I would just say it's a little bit better in general because it's been so bad for so long. But my short game, like just when I have all the clubs there, I'll make a better decision, and then I'll usually get a better outcome. So, and that's also, I want to implement these kind of concepts for my chips too. It's like, don't rush, with my hands. And so always have like enough of a backswing with my chips that I have time to turn, and then if it's not enough time, then I have to hit a different shot. And so I always want to try and do at minimum, like getting my club to parallel in the back. And so that gives me actually 6 different shots. So I can do, using the bounce, more off my front foot, I can put it back in my stance, and then that gives me 2 shots with my 3 wedges, 52, 56, and 60. So I have 6 different shots. And so they'll go different distances and do different things. And I could probably incorporate something like that also with my pitching wedge, but have 6 different shots there, and then pitching wedge on down. Most of those that I'd ever use are standing it up like a putter, like where I'm just off the green and then have different amounts of green to work with. So that's almost like a putting stroke with kind of like, the toe down kind of thing. And so, but at minimum, I always want the club to go to parallel and then pick the shot accordingly. And so it kind of gives me like a minimum, depth, so to speak, in the backswing. So, I never feel like I'm rushed, if I just do these kind of chippy little swings. So I just, that's going to be a way, I think, to help me pick the right club, not just always pick the 60. Because, if I do that backswing and then look at the shot, maybe it's a 56 or 52, that would be better suited. And so, but always have the same swing. And so I'll have the same swing for the ball up front where I'm using the bounce, and then the same swing with all the different clubs off my back foot, kind of trapping it, trying to get more spin. So I kind of like, that's the concept. I haven't really implemented that, but I like that in theory, but it utilizes the same principles as what I was doing with my irons on the range. It's like, give yourself time to let the hips get out of the way, is ultimately what all of this boils down to. Is that, if the transition gets fast and the club gets steep, then, you can't fix that with the hips clearing. Okay. And so it's just steep, you just got to do something, and then the brain will figure it out, something that's not going to be optimal. And so, I don't want that to happen very often. And so that's usually why the better players tend to be, people who hook it more than they want, but they usually don't stand the club up, which is what it's called, like, getting steep too often, because they are usually shallow or too shallow kind of thing. And so it's a better thing. It can obviously cause problems when you flip your hands, but they're trained, and better players don't do that. So it's a little bit more manageable, but I don't want that, basically don't need that to occur, and it's actually fairly easy to fix. It's just like a tempo thing, and just smoothing out the transition. And it's funny when I now realize, when I boil it down, it's a misconception as to like how fast my arms need to move to get, for example, this 5-iron to go 210 yards. In my mind, I think I gotta like scream at it, but that doesn't make it do that. Okay. It then puts all the responsibility on your arms to generate the power and to square it up, which is basically impossible. Okay. You might do it like 1 in 20 shots or something like that, but you won't get the ball flight and the height that you want. So that's so it boils down to a misconception, that you can learn by trial and error. And I think that's one of the biggest things that most people just in general just don't understand, and then the pros they do understand that they don't need to move their arms very fast. And the power does not come from the arms. You could think of it as the power gets preserved in the arms or slightly amplified, again, closer to the ball. But the power is generated by turn, angle preservation, and the angle of attack. And so that's the foundation, of good distance. And so, superficial turn or a quick transition and all those kind of things will make sure that whatever happens, it's not going to be good after that. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to get a shot that you're going to like, that kind of thing. So that's it. It boils down to a misconception, one misconception, which can then cause so many other issues downstream, so to speak. And so that's been a major revelation, I would say, for me with all my clubs and really all the shots, and even to some extent putting, where I need to just have a little bit slower and smoother stroke. But definitely with chipping, irons, driving iron, and with my driver for sure. So same keys. I need to watch my driver video again. I think it's pretty much the same thing, but just further reaffirmation through field testing that I have no hope of ever hitting a driver consistently ever if I don't train my head to stay back, to be back first and foremost at setup, and then, get the spine tilt. And then the more will help me get it up. And so I can get away with a little bit more than most people because I tee the ball up a bit higher, but, and then that has to stay there. And so I have to feel like I'm in my tilt up until impact. So again, the tilt is like this, and I feel rotationally, and it allows this arm to extend, because it's staying back. And so what that does when my head stays back is that it forces this arm, my trail arm, to get long just to reach the ball. Okay, because I can't do this to get to the ball, and then I get very steep and then, sweepy. So when the head stays back and remains back right up until impact, then it forces this arm to have to get long to reach the ball, and that's what you want. And it's going to be long and up, and so that it's like an anchor. And so what I'm doing when I'm doing this is I'm trying to get the swing over with and just like cheating and taking my hands going to the ball, where instead I have to let this arm and whole arm release and get long, like this, okay, with the head still back. And so the longer this arm gets, it also stabilizes the swing because the club head doesn't have as many ways to flip around, and all that, because, it's just more likely to follow that arc basically on the way down. And so that's the sort of technical reason, why that's extremely important. And that's part of it is angle preservation, but then also making sure that the club comes in either flat or slightly down. A little bit is okay, but flat or up, ideally a little bit for me, because I hit it low usually. So, that's the thing for me. It's like with the driver, like I have to add in a little bit. I have to slow everything down even more. And so that's another counterintuitive thing. When you have longer clubs that you feel like you should hit it further, I have to convince myself mentally that I actually have to slow everything down even more. Okay. Because my backswing has to be slower. I definitely have to get to a full shoulder turn, preferably even a little bit more, as much as I can, humanly possible. And then just trust the club head, and then if this head stays back, I can swing as hard as I want, as long as the head stays back and then the hips go. Okay. And so those have to happen first. And then, the head stays back has to always be there. Anchor point. I have to just state that to myself before I swing. And then after my turn is complete, as long as my hips are the ones that are leading and my head, again, stays back in that condition, then I'll hit pretty good shots. So it does sound like a lot, but it's a few things, is what I think that is reasonable that our brain can process, like 2 or 3 things when I'm practicing to remember. I mean, if you have like 5 things, our brain gets confused. The nice thing about this is the head thing is an anchor point in the setup. The nice thing about the shoulder turn is that you just go to your physical limitations. So it shouldn't be that hard to reproduce. And then the transition being smooth is what we thought of before we hit. And then the hips will naturally react because the head conditions are staying put. So you got to get to the ball somehow. So if all those things are done, then usually the hips will do the right thing, plus or minus a little bit. So if you clear them a bit more, you can go at it a bit more. And then you can put a little bit more speed on the hands, arms, but they got to go, at least some, definitely with the driver. And the long iron. So that's it's kind of cool that they're all sort of similar. They're basically the same concepts. It's just the setup is different. But the principles, which is what my brain can sort of work with, are all fundamentally the same. It's like, even with my irons, like I don't want my head moving around and like diving to the ball or anything like that. Like, it's not going to hurt if I keep it pretty much the same. I definitely don't want to come up on it, try and hit up on the ball, or, slightly down, I believe is what the pros do, because they want to really trap the ball. And so when the head moves down a little bit with the irons, it forces your hips to move even more to make room, because you've now changed your head position. You're kind of like making a more compact space. And so the only way the arms can move and get through is if the hips go even more. So it kind of puts pressure on the hips to clear even more. So they get even more what's called forward shaft lean, and then more distance. But I mean, I can't consciously do all that. I just have to make sure my head does not go up. Okay, definitely not back, and obviously not forward. Okay, so if it goes down a little bit with the irons, it's okay. And if it goes back a little bit with the driver, that's okay. But whatever, my brain can't figure all those. Those are like last second reactions. But like ultimately, just keep the head in the same place that it started at all cost. And so one of the main reasons the head does move is because the arms are doing everything, And then so to make room, we have to lift up. And so we didn't give our chance by our head locking in there for the hips to be the ones that create space for the arms to come through, which is what we want. So, again, the hips thing, usually what I'm trying to say is you get for free if you do all the other things bang on. So that was kind of a mouthful, but in my brain, it sort of makes sense. So to summarize for me, to come back to this, irons, pre-shot thought, don't flail the arms like absurdly fast. And it's more of a concept that I can just think when I'm just not even golfing, that the arms don't generate the power. We can think of it as they preserve it, they guide it, and they can amplify it maybe 5 or 10%. Okay. The other things do hip turn, shoulder turn, and then smooth transition leading to the hips clearing first, and then the club coming in, with the proper angle of attack. And then with the wrist angle and all those conditions staying the same. So you get forward shaft lean, you get compression. Okay. And so that's the stuff, all those things that create the actual power. And then if you get good at that, then you could add a bit more speed with your hands, but your hips better be notified when we're trying to do that the arms are going to be coming through quicker. So you got to get out of the way. Okay. So that's like advanced, for people who've done the basic movement enough that they can add a little bit more speed on top of that because they have all that sequencing set wired in their brain. I don't have it yet. Like I said, maybe I don't know, I'm a pretty good iron player, but I would say that happens 60 or 70% of the time. Ideally, I want it 80 or 90% of the time. And then one shot, just, again, all these 80 or 90 are not perfect, but they're all in the air and then struck decent. So that's my objective. I'm not, like a tour player or anything, but, and then the thing that I just add on to that chain of events with my driver is just make sure that my setup is correct, stand a little bit closer, which is what it ultimately works out to be. And I stand a bit taller, and then, make sure the head stays back, hang on for dear life. That head cannot move. Okay. And so that forces a lot of other things to happen. And then, just do a kind of a bit more smoother, backswing, and then, make sure I get a full shoulder turn, and then, just a peaceful transition, and then the hip should, re-engage, because they've been set this way, and then they'll want to snap back, and so clear, my right side. So again, those things will not happen perfectly, but you know, if I create this environment, you know, then I'll be able to, you know, get my driver a little bit more playable than it is now.